This video is brought to you by Sailrite. Visit Sailrite.com for all your project supplies, tools, and instructions. In this video tutorial, we're going to show you how to reupholster a golf cart's vinyl seat. This seat features a two-tone design with a beautiful geometric vinyl fabric sewn in at the center of each seat. This tutorial video will include how to determine the fabric required, how to cut the plates and boxing. The plates refers to the top of the cushion, and the boxing refers to the sides of the cushion. Our seat includes two colors. We'll show you how to sew those colors together for the top plate. After that's done, we'll show you how to sew the boxing on, which is the sides of the seat cushion. Most, if not all, golf cart seats are typically stapled to a backer board. We'll show you how to do that as well. And finally, to give it a complete finished look, even on the bottom side, we'll staple on cushion underlining material. Let's get started and show you how to reupholster your own golf cart seat using marine quality vinyl from Sailrite. Determining the fabric that is required is relatively easy. Just take a length measurement and a width measurement. Don't forget to include the material that will wrap around the backer board on the back side. If you're only using one color for the seat, 1 yard may possibly complete the seat, but it will be super skimpy. I would order 2 yards to be sure. However, for our seat, we want to incorporate a two-tone look using a different colored geometric vinyl at the center on both sides. This means we will need to order 1 yard of each color. The reupholstery of the backrest will be shown in another video. If you want to order enough fabric to complete the two backrests and the seat, I would order 2 yards of each color of vinyl fabric. On the underside of our backer board, to give it a finished look, we're going to staple on cushion underlining material. We have it in multiple colors. You will only need 1 yard of cushion underlining material to complete the seat bottom. See a full materials and tools list at the end of this video. To pick our vinyl fabric, we're going to go to Fabric and then select Marine Vinyl Fabric. Here you'll find hundreds of vinyl fabrics in the exterior cushion lineup. Multiple colors, patterns, and styles are available. In preparation of cutting our plates and the boxing, we first need to mark our old seat. We already have backrests designed with our two-tone look, so here we're using the clear acrylic ruler and determining where the backrest, the two-tone brown shade, will rest on our seat bottom, and we've marked it with a Sharpie marker. The seat's been removed from the golf cart, and we're disassembling the metal frame around our seat. This seat is attached to what we call a backer board. Using an L square, we'll transfer the marks that we made at the top of the cushion to the sides of the cushion. This vinyl seat will be discarded, so we don't have to worry about marking it up. Now we'll transfer those lines to the back side or the backer board of our golf cart seat cushion. In doing this, we're going to be assured that our seat backs match our seat bottom. Now, if you've made the seat bottom first, you would just reverse this process with the seat backs. For a tailored finished look, we will sew on the sides, often called boxing. So before we remove the old vinyl fabric, we need to mark where we want the boxing to start along the edge. We typically mark the edge about 1/4 to 1/2 inch down from the top edge of the seat. Notice we also mark the back and the front with a B and an F. We're going to mark across the top using that line we marked on the cushion as a reference, and we measured up with the clear acrylic ruler, and now we'll use it to create dash lines along the length of the cushion. So basically they are all the same height along the top edge of our seat bottom. This cushion at the corners is not quite straight, in other words, not 90 degrees to the tabletop. So we'll try to follow the contour of the cushion. And here at the front edge, it's slightly canted as well. So we need to strike a line there to indicate where the corner is. For ease of sewing and for a better looking seat, the top corners need to be rounded with a gentle curve like this. In fact, where we marked this edge, we'll actually go outside of it as seen here because that makes the transition nice and smooth. We'll do that at the forward edge as well. Smooth gentle curve. There we go. We only need to pattern one side of our boxing. We'll use this same side as our pattern for the opposite side. We'll just flip it backwards. We've measured the top of our cushion and have determined where the center position is and marked it there. Now we'll use a straight edge and transfer the center mark all the way down to the boxing that we just created. Now, after everything is marked, we can remove the old vinyl from the cushion. On the back side of the backer board, we'll use the tack and stapler remover, available from Sailrite. Then we'll use needle nose pliers and pull up those staples and remove them. Now is the time to determine if the backer board is still in good shape and the foam is in good shape. It looks like both are here, so we'll reuse those. It's very important to mark the front of our board and the back of our board, which we forgot to do earlier, so we're doing it now. Let's confirm the depth by using the old fabric we removed. We accounted for 36 inches, and as you can see here, we will have plenty of fabric to wrap around our foam and our backer board. Now we can cut our boxing that we traced. This is the side of the cushion. We'll cut it directly on top of the marks that we made on the old vinyl. To determine the width of the brown section, we need to take one of the cushions and decide how much should be covered in brown. We've already finished the backrest. When we were designing the backrest, we decided that we wanted the brown two-tone section to be about 10 inches when completed. With seam allowance, which is ½ inch on each side, that'll mean we need to cut it to 11 inches. Now that we know what we want for the brown portion of our seat, we're going to cut it to size. Our Morbern Hexx fabric has been turned upside down, and we're using a cutting mat and laying it so it's perfectly straight on the cutting mat. Using the clear acrylic ruler, we'll mark it to 11 inches in width on the two sides. Then we'll use it as a straight edge and use the rotary cutter on top of the cutting mat to cut the strip of fabric to size. For our seat bottom, we need 2 of these strips, so here we're repeating it one more time. The back side of most vinyl fabrics for seating applications can be marked with a pencil. To cut beautiful straight pieces for our plate, I love to use the rotary cutter, the cutting mat, and the clear acrylic ruler. It makes this job very easy, as you can see. Now we have 2 strips of fabric that are 11 inches wide by 36 inches in length of the Morbern Hexx copper. Now we'll go back to our old vinyl and measure it at the centered location between the 2 brown strips. From marker to marker mark, it's 9 1/8 inches. Add 1 inch for seam allowance, and we need to cut it to 10 1/8 inch. And our vinyl fabric is facing wrong side up, so we mark it with a pencil at 10 1/8 inch. This is only for the middle section between the 2 brown tones. For the white fabric, we've chosen to use the Morbern Allsport, which is a 4-way stretch vinyl. Our theory in using it is that it may help the seat to look better on the ends because it stretches in 4 directions. However, do not feel like you need to use the 4-way stretch vinyl. Just a standard marine quality vinyl that's available from Sailrite will work as well. Our top plate will actually consist of 5 separate sections, but we're going to first sew these 3 sections together first. We'll lay our white fabric on top of the brown fabric so that outside surfaces are facing each other. We will not baste or seam any of these panels together. We'll take them directly over to the sewing machine, and we're going to use the deluxe 5.5 inch magnetic guide and place it on the ½ inch mark of our needle plate so our stitch is a ½ inch away from the raw edge of the fabric assembly. We'll be sure to line up the fabric as we sew so that they are directly on top of each other along that raw edge. And we'll sew a straight stitch, usually about 6 millimeters in length. We're sewing this with a V92 polyester thread. For your reference, we're using the Sailrite Ultrafeed LSZ1 sewing machine. This is a straight stitch and zigzag walking foot portable sewing machine set up in the collapsible table. There is no need to do any reversing at the beginning and the end of our sewing, mainly because these panels are a little bit long anyway and they'll be wrapped around a backer board. Now we're sewing the top stitch of what we call a semi-flat felled seam, and the top stitch is actually catching the half-inch tail on the underside of our fabric assembly. Though you can't see it here, we'll show you a little bit later on. Be sure to always pull left and right as you feed this assembly through the sewing machine so it splays the panels apart along the first stitch. And here's what it looks like on the underside. A semi-flat felled seam hides one stitch from the elements, and one stitch is exposed to the elements on the top side surface. It's a very strong seam and looks great. Here we're sewing the other side of our vinyl that's brown in color on top of our middle white strip that's on the underside. Outside surfaces are facing each other. This is our primary stitch, and when we're done with that, we'll create our top stitch. Now we're going to sew our top stitch into the white vinyl, not the brown, mainly because we're using a white thread. So we want to do that on everything that we sew for this golf cart, so it's all the same. Remember, as you sew this top stitch, keep that stitch about an 1/8 inch away from your splayed open portion and pull the panels left and right. Be sure you sew through the half-inch tail on the underside. To complete our top plate, we're going to sew 1 and 5 together on the extreme ends that's right next to the brown fabric. Going back to our old vinyl, we'll take a measurement towards the sides. We need to make sure that we have at least 6 inches of fabric, but let's go extra. So let's make a strip on the sides that's about 9 inches in width and 36 inches in length for our application. We'll be cutting the extra off later on. We'll cut that with the rotary cutter into strips just like we did before. Now we'll take those strips and lay them on top of the brown so that outside surfaces are facing each other. When this plate is finally sewn together, it will be too long in length from left to right. We'll have to cut it down later. Now we're going to sew those to this assembly just like we did the middle panel to the two brown pieces. A semi-flat felled seam will be utilized here as well. Once that stitch is done, we'll do a top stitch. Be sure to sew into the white portion of the fabric, unless you've chosen to obviously sew into the dark portion using a different thread or even a white thread. That is your choice, but you want to make it consistent. We'll repeat this procedure for the other white panel on the opposite end. Let's move on. Out of our old vinyl, we cut a boxing strip out of one side of our old cushion. We're going to use it to pattern the new boxing. So we're going to take a pencil and mark on top of our vinyl material. This is with the vinyl material facing wrong side up, referring to the new vinyl underneath, the one which I'm marking on. We've traced around it. Now we need to add some length to it. So we're going to use our clear acrylic ruler and just strike a line following the general lines that we patterned from our old vinyl boxing strip. This extra material will ensure that we can wrap it around the backer board easily. And then we'll cut it out with scissors. Notice that we marked it F for front and we marked the center position. I don't believe we showed that very well in the first portion. So the F for front and B for back is very important, mainly because there's a little bit of different angle at the ends. Now we'll make a second one for the opposite end. To do that, we'll flip this one so the outside surface is facing up and trace around it as our pattern. The new vinyl underneath it is facing wrong side up yet again. Don't forget to mark the center and also mark the forward and back portion. Before we can sew this boxing to our plate, we need to cut our plate to size. To do that, we're going to go back to the foam in the backer board and measure its width. We'll start from one end measuring the backer board because the foam only protrudes about 1/4 inch past the backer board. So we're going to use our backer board as our measurement. So our backer board is 40 3/8 inch. Now we want to make this plate 1 inch shorter. That's a 1/2 inch on each side. And when we take out the seam allowance, it'll make it even shorter. But that's what we want for a good fitting cover. For us, ours is 39 3/8 inch. Yours may be different. Now we'll take our plate and lay it on top of our backer board with the foam. We already struck lines on our backer board to indicate where each stripe would go. As you can see, the panels match up pretty much to the lines that we drew on the backer board. We will mark the plate at the edges of the backer board on both sides with the pencil. Now we can turn the plate wrong side up and transfer that line to the back side on both sides of that plate. We want this plate to be 1 inch shorter, so we will measure over a ½ inch on each side inside that first line we struck down. The slightly smaller size will make it look good when it's pulled taut around the foam. At those marks, we will now cut off the excess material on each side. So here we're just measuring over to extend that line, and then we'll use our rotary cutter, our cutting mat, and the clear acrylic ruler to cut off the excess material on each side of our plate. Now we'll fold that plate in half to find the center location, so we want to be assured that the seams are directly on top of each other as we try to find the general center location of our plate. With everything laying flat, we'll take our pencil and mark the fold at that center location. This is marking on the wrong side of the fabric. We'll do that on both sides, being assured that our seams are directly on top of each other so we have a perfectly folded top plate. So we can see that mark easily, we're going to cut a triangle out at that center location with our scissors. We will not go any deeper than a ½ inch into our assembly, so we'll never see it when we sew the assembly together. We'll do that on both sides. The position of the stripes is not exactly centered for our plate, so it matches the backrests. So we need to indicate which is the forward edge and the back edge, so we make sure that we get the right side on the right side and the left side on the left side. Flip the plate right side up. Now find your boxing pieces and lay them so outside surfaces are facing each other, with the front side and the back side facing the same direction as we marked on the plate and on the boxing. The center position of the boxing should be on the center position of the plate, and we also cut notches in the boxing. We did not show that. Here's how it'll fit on the foam. Again, since our plate stripes are not exactly centered, we need to be assured that we're placing the boxing on so it matches the front and the back. So here we marked F, and here's F on the boxing, so this is correct. Now we can take it to the sewing machine and match up the center locations, and we'll start sewing from the center locations a ½ inch in. We're using the Deluxe 5½ inch magnetic guide to help keep our stitch a ½ inch from the raw edge of the fabric. When we get to the corner, watch what we do here. We actually have to pull the boxing so that its edge lines up with the plate underneath. So go slowly here, 1 stitch at a time, and sometimes it's a good idea to grab the balance wheel and roll it around, burying the needle sometimes and lifting the foot to make pivots in the fabric. Your job? Match up the raw edges of the fabric and sew a ½ inch away from them. Since we're using an Allsport, a 4-way stretch, that's the white vinyl, we have to be careful not to stretch it too much as we make this turn. Because that fabric actually stretches a lot more than a regular marine vinyl does. We'll start at the center position yet again. We didn't show it, but we flipped this entire assembly around. Instead of the plate being on the bottom side, it's now on the top side, and the boxing or the side piece is on the bottom. We start sewing about 1 inch over our previous stitches, and typically we do not do any reversing. This is the first stitch of a semi-flat felled seam. We will sew this half just the same as we sewed the other half, except for this time the boxing or the side piece is on the bottom side. So watch what we do when we reach the corner. Since the side piece is on the bottom and it's what has the shape built into it, we need to make sure that the 2 outer edges are lined up as we sew. So one hand is underneath the assembly on the boxing, and we are twisting it so it lines up with the top plate that's on the top side as we sew. So take your time here again, because we are rounding a gentle curve. and we're twisting the bottom plate and matching up the raw edges as we sew around that curve. Now we're almost back to the straightaway, and all we have to do is line up the two edges and sew down to the end. Notice that the boxing and the plates are not equal lengths. That's the portion that'll wrap around the backer board. That is not a big deal, so do not be alarmed by it. After we're done, we're going to put a top stitch in this, completing our semi-flat filled seam. We like to fold the fabric back and sew into the top plate, not the side boxing. And we do need to take our time here because there is shape again yet at the corner. So make sure that you're sewing through the 1/2 inch tail on the underside, and also splay your fabric apart left and right as you sew. When we're sewing the corner, the fabric will want to bunch up past the presser foot, in other words, past the portion that we've sewn. And sometimes that bunched up fabric can get caught on that metal black bar of a Sailrite ultrafeed sewing machine. So pay attention to that as you sew around the corner. If it bunches up, like you can see here, use your fingers and press that bunch down and past the black bar. This way, it won't impede with your sewing process. When you get to the straightaway, you won't have to worry about that. We're splaying our vinyl apart, not splaying it so much that it actually causes the first stitch to be visible, but enough that it is consistently splayed apart across the entire span that we have to sew. And now here we're reaching yet another corner, and I'm going to take my time here, and I'm going to make sure the fabric doesn't get caught again underneath that black arm of the sewing machine at the corner, because it wants to bunch up, and sew all the way to the end. There is our top stitch complete. That completes one side of our boxing. Now we need to do that to the opposite side. We will not show that since the process is done in exactly the same way. Here's what the top stitch looks like, and on the bottom side we did sew through that 1/2 inch tail, so you see 2 stitches there. Let's move on. Before we place the cover on the foam, we want to wrap the foam in the silk film, which is a noiseless plastic that does feel like silk, though it's not. So we've cut the silk film, and we lay one layer over the top of our foam piece, and then fold the side halves over top of each other by at least 12 inches or so. And this does two things. It will first make it easy for us to slip on our new cover, and it will also help to prevent water that leaks through any needle holes from getting into our foam. It's a preventative measure. It isn't foolproof. But watch how easy our cover slips into place because of the slipperiness of the silk film. Our golf cart seat has a front side and a back side, so we have to be assured that we place the cover on correctly. I've got another helper that's helping to compress the foam as I staple it in place, and I'm being assured that I'm stapling the seams so they line up with the lines that we marked on the backer board. Here my helper is just standing on the foam to compress it. This will make for a tight-fitting cover. Once we have the center position stapled in place, Zach will apply pressure at one of the ends, and we will pull the vinyl fabric taut, the boxing that is, and staple it in about 3 to 4 locations there to secure it at the middle position. Then we will work on the opposite end, doing the same thing there. The pressure that Zach is applying to compress the foam with his foot helps to keep us from having to pull the vinyl tightly around the foam, so it's a little trade secret. Okay, now it's secured at all 4 sides, and you notice there's some wrinkles there. Those will pull out, as you can see here, when we tension the rest of the cover. We're just making sure that we're happy with its placement. Our cover is now secured at the right position on all 4 sides. We will apply pressure and start stapling around the perimeter now. Sailrite does carry some great pneumatic staple guns that are very reasonable in price. We have a long nose staple gun, which we are using here, and a short nose. The long nose is great for hard to reach areas, but can also be used for general upholstery, as you see here. You'll notice here that we have a fairly large wrinkle. We're going to remove the first staples that were affixed to our seam location and redistribute that area of fabric to hopefully take out the wrinkle or at least distribute it amongst that span. So we're redistributing the vinyl and we'll re-staple it in place. Having all this excess fabric that wraps around the backer board is typically not our best friend. We probably should have cut off some of the excess fabric to make our stapling job a little bit easier, but as you can see, we can still get it done with all this excess fabric wrapping around the backer board. We'll staple all the way to the corner and stop short by an inch or two. Stapling a fabric to a backer board is typically done close to the edge rather than several inches inside the edge as we are doing here. The reason staples are usually placed close to the edge are twofold. One, it allows for the installer to pull on the loose edge of the fabric as they staple along the edge of the backer board. And two, it also leaves more of a professional looking backside as the excess fabric is cut away after securing or stapling the cover in place. So why aren't we doing that? Well, we have someone that's compressing the foam, so we do not have to pull much on the vinyl fabric. We just have to make sure that it's taut as we staple it in place. And we are also going to use a cushion underlining on the back side of the backer board to give it a professional look. When we reach the corners, what we want for a nice tight fit. And we also want the corners to look good. So all I'm going to do here is tuck the fabric in between and create a fold and keep that folded edge a little bit inside the outer edge of the side. Then I'll staple it in place so it's nice and taut. There are a variety of ways to finish off a corner. Some people will cut notches or slits at the corner, as long as they're not visible on the sides, and tuck the fabric at the corners. Your main goal is to make that corner look good. Since we're not going to be looking at the bottom side and only the sides of the cushion, this will look excellent. After stapling around the entire perimeter, we want to then place staples about every ½ inch or so away from each other all around the entire perimeter. We will cut away the excess fabric and we will also cut away some of the silk film. We do not need that silk film on the bottom side of our backer board. You'll notice the backer board does have a few holes to allow some breathability. That is kind of important for a cushion with a backer board that's wrapped in silk film, because silk film has a tendency to sometimes blow up like a balloon when the occupant sits on the cushion. Those holes will allow some air to escape. To give it a more finished look, especially on the bottom side, when the seat is lifted up, we're going to apply cushion underlining material. Here we've cut the material to the approximate size. It is oversized yet, but this will allow us to staple it around the perimeter. The edges of cushion underlining material do not unravel, so there's no need to create a hem around the perimeter. Just staple very close to the edge of the fabric around the perimeter, giving it a finished look on the bottom side. Cushion underlining material from Sailrite is available in a variety of colors. Here we've chosen to use white, though we probably should have chosen black, since black would hide any dirt, because this will be facing the battery compartment, which is typically not very clean. To install our frame around the perimeter of the cushion we just finished, we're going to use an awl and find the old holes that are buried underneath our cushion underlining material and also the vinyl. But if we place that metal frame on the bottom side of our backer board, we can typically find those holes fairly easily. We purchased brand new stainless steel screws from a hardware store since the other ones were rusted. After finding all the holes with the awl and screwing in each of the screws to reassemble our metal frame, our newly reupholstered golf cart seat cushion is complete. And I must say, it looks awesome. Now we can take it to the golf cart, and utilizing the metal hinges on our frame, we can set those hinges into the brackets. And our reupholstered golf cart seat is totally done. The materials lists and the tools are next. Sailrite carries a large variety of vinyl materials that are marine quality that would work great for a golf cart seat like this. If you have any questions about the materials or the tools that we used, be sure to give us a call. We're glad to help. To see more videos that are related to this type of project, click one of the links here. For more free videos like this, be sure to check out the Sailrite website or subscribe to the Sailrite YouTube channel. After subscribing to our YouTube channel, be sure to click the bell to be notified of new videos when they come available. I'm Eric Grant, and from all of us here at Sailrite, thanks for watching.